Hello everyone, and welcome to another exciting tutorial in which we are going to solve another video editing question for summer 2019, and it's paper 2. Now I'll be using Premiere Pro in solving this question, and I'll assume that as an A-level candidate you have some basic knowledge of how to use video editing software like Windows Movie Maker and Adobe Premiere Pro. So let's dive into the question. You will create a short video to advertise a New Year celebration that will take place this year in the town of Amal. The original clips were filmed on 31st December 2018 by GBR Video in Amal, Austria. All files produced must be of professional standard. Create a new document called evidence followed by your candidate number, for example, evidence 9999. Place your name, center number, and candidate number in the header of this document. Save this document. You have been supplied with the following sources: Elmer 1, Elmer 2, Elmer Arms, Opera. Open and examine the file Elmer 1 and set the image ratio to 16.9. Remove the first 4.8 seconds of the clip and then trim the clip so that only 10 seconds remain. So as we read the question, we will be solving it alongside in our software. Alright, so here we are in Premiere Pro, which is divided into 4 sections. We have our source monitor on the top left, a program monitor on the right, project monitor down here, and then we have the timeline to the right on the bottom right corner. For the purpose of this question, the workspace I am using is graphics, so you can maintain it on graphics. That's if you are using Adobe Premiere Pro. Graphics because we will be doing some text alongside. There's some text in the question, so I prefer to use graphics. So next thing we need to do is quickly import our files. You can either drag and drop the files into the import media or into this section here, the project monitor. You can drag and drop the files here, or you can right click and say import. Now let's try and drag and drop. I'm going to open the folder, select the files that I need, the files that were mentioned in the question. There are 4 in all. Go to Premiere Pro and drop them here. So we have Elmer Arms, Elmer 1, Elmer 2, and Opera. Let's go back to the question and see. It says, open and examine the file Elmer 1 MP4 and set the ratio to 16:9. So Elmer 1, what we need to do is drag and drop it to the timeline. Now as soon as you do that, a sequence is created here, up here in the programs monitor. It says we should set it to 16:9. Mostly by default, it's always in Premiere Pro, it's always 16:9. Let's be sure by going into sequence up here, sequence settings, and looking at the video section. We look at the ratio that is written here, where the cursor is showing here. It's 16:9. So just click OK. But before we continue, what if the question says set the image ratio to 4:3, which is a standard size for our TV sets, the old TV sets, not the flat screens? How do you go about that? Once again, you select your clip, which you've already added, go to sequence settings, and change the frame size. So in this case, you are supposed to know the frame size for standard. which is 640 pixels for the horizontal, and vertical, which is the height, 480. Press the tab key once, and you see that our aspect ratio here changes to 4:3. So we click OK, then it gives you a warning that it will change the frame size, and then you see it's almost a square. This is standard size. So let's switch back to our question. You can just press Ctrl and Z, which I just did, Ctrl Z, and then it changes back to the actual size. So we are supposed to trim the first 4.8 seconds. So on the timeline here, we have a playhead position here, which is in the form of a timer. We have the microseconds for the first two zeros, the seconds here, the minutes, and then the first one is the hours. So we are dealing with seconds here, so we have 4.8. You just type in 04, yes. So this is 4 seconds. And then the 0.8. It's not going to be 80, it's going to be 08. So I need to put like this. Yes. And I press enter. It moves the playhead to the 4.8 seconds mark. Now next you pick your razor tool, which is up here, and then align it with the playhead and then just make a cut. We are taking the first 4.8 seconds off, so we select that portion, just click on it once and press delete. Now there's some space created here. To eliminate that space, just click there once and delete. Move your clip forward. Next it says trim the clip so that only 10 seconds remain. So back again, bring your playhead to 0.00. In your timer on the seconds section, you enter 10. So when they say trim the clip, I suggest you cut off. After you do the cut, you take off the last portion. So now that we've just trimmed or split the clip after 10 seconds, you delete the last portion. So now we have only 10 seconds remaining. Now the next part of the question says we should take a snapshot of the first frame of the video and add the Elmer Arms PNG in the top right corner to create a background image for the title. Okay, so the playhead is already on the first frame. This is the first frame. We are supposed to take a snapshot of it. So how do we do that? So we ensure that our playhead is on the 0 mark on the first frame. Go to our programs monitor, which is here, and look under the tools here, and then you see an icon looking like a camera. Click on it once, and then this window pops up. You can name your file intro. I'm going to name it intro, and I'm going to leave the format as JPEG. And this is very important, the path where you are going to save your snapshot, because you'll be picking it up. So I'm going to go to browse, and I'm selecting my tutorial folder. Then I click OK. Now we need to make sure the intro is in here in our project bin. So we need to import it. So to do that, I'm just going to go into my tutorial folder once again, and then here we have our intro. So I'll just click and drag and drop it into my project section. So I have an intro which I need to introduce onto the timeline. Now before we continue, let's go back to the question and see what it demands on us. It says take a snapshot, which we've done for the first frame, and add the coat of arms or the Elmo arms.png in the top right corner, and create a background image for a title sequence like this, and then place the title background at the start of your video and display it for the first 10 seconds or for 10 seconds. Then after that, we will come to the text, which it says add the text celebrate New Year with us to the title in a white sans serif font like this. And then add an appropriate animation to place this text. Okay. Let's quickly go back into Premiere Pro. And so we're going to drag and drop our intro onto the timeline. Now let's place the playhead at the end of the timeline, at the end of the intro, and realize that it's approximately 4 or 5 seconds, 4 point something or 5 seconds. Okay, 4.5 seconds. So we can extend this by going back to the timer, entering 10. Yeah, so the playhead says this is where 10 seconds ends. So still on the intro clip, which is the pink one we see here, when you bring your cursor to the end of it, you see this handle. Yeah, you can click and drag to where the playhead is. Yeah, so it's on the 10-second mark. So this should play first, the intro should play first before the video. So now to ensure that we are going to select the video, which is the blue one, the first one that we added and trimmed, and bring it to the end like this. Now we can bring the intro back down so that they both are on one line. Next, we need to bring in the arms, the Elmo arms. So we click and drag that one on top of the intro. So we have something like this. Now we need to ensure that it also lasts for 10 seconds. So when you bring the handle to the end of it, click and drag it to the 10-second mark. Next, let's ensure it's positioned rightly in the top right corner. So we said as it is selected, let me differentiate it. We can differentiate it by right clicking, going to label, and let me give it yellow so that we know that this is for the arms. It's also written in the clip here. Then I go to the effects controls, which is in your top left corner. And you see position, so we need to change the position. So the first figure you see here under position is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. So we need to send it to our right. So as what I'm doing is clicking and dragging the figure, and then click and drag the x-axis upwards. Now we need to increase the scale a little bit as well, just a little bit. So I'm putting the cursor on the 100 on the scale here and then clicking and dragging a little bit up. You see it touches the frame at the top, so we need to correct that, bring it down a little bit. So we go back to the position. And bring that down. Now next we need to add some text to our intro. So simply pick the type tool, click anywhere on the screen, as soon as you do that, you see the bunch of menus appear on the right of your screen, and this you will see if you are in the graphics workspace. This is why I mentioned that you should be in the graphics workspace so that you can access these things. And then here, over here, we can make changes to our font type, the size, the alignment, the fill color, whether you want to add a stroke, etc. So you're supposed to select a sans serif font. The sans serif font is a font that does not have extensions at the ends. And for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to select Myriad Pro Bold, and the text should be white in contrast to the intro. I'm going to increase the size a bit to like say 140, or let's say 110 is okay, 110. Come back to your programs monitor and then you can start typing the message. Celebrate the new year with us. So you can see this is aligned to the right, so we need to make it center line. So just select the whole text that you've typed, press center. Now click and drag it to the position where it matches what is on the question paper. And then now let's come back to our timeline. You see our cursor was placed at this position when you started typing, so the clip created starts from that point. And we want the clip to start from the beginning, or the text to start from the beginning. So we click and drag our text to the beginning of the video. So we are assuming that, okay, the text is at the beginning, but it must also last the length of the intro. So we select the handle, click and drag it to the 10-second mark so that it lasts the entire duration of the intro. So as the question demands, we need to ensure that the text comes in animated. So for the purpose of this question, I'm going to stick to the movement of the text, nothing so complex. We're just going to move the text just as we moved the arms. And in this case, we are going to add keyframes along the timeline. So to do that, we first ensure that the playhead is on the 0 mark and select the text clip which says to celebrate the new year with us. Let me differentiate it once again. Let me give it blue. This is the text. Playhead on 0.00. Go to the effects controls. Look for position. And let's drag it out of the screen by placing a cursor on the x-axis figure, clicking and dragging to your right till it gets out of the screen. Now next to the position, there's a stopwatch. Click on it once, and then over here you see that it's created a keyframe. Now I'm going to widen this portion a bit so that we can see what is going on. And I'm going to move my play handle forward. Let's say I want the animation to last for just 2 seconds. So I'm just going to type 2 in the timer. And it brings the playhead to the 2-second mark. And then see in the effect controls, there's the playhead here is also on the 2-second mark. I'll go back to the position, the x-axis again, and click and drag your text back to the screen. And you see it creates another keyframe aside the first one it created. So if we play back what we've just created, we have this movement of the text coming into screen. Let's move on. The next part of the question is take a snapshot of the last frame of the video clip to create a background image for a caption. Create a caption and display it for 7 seconds. Place it at the end of the video. Ensure that the caption text is easy to read with 3 lines of the text identifying the location, fireworks at midnight, date of the event. Add different appropriate effects to place the caption. That's 9 marks. And then next we see place the video clip Elmore 2 after the caption. Use a 2-second transition to change from the caption background to the video clip. And then next we select an appropriate background and transition for the credits. Place this at the end of the video and display it for 7 seconds. Add appropriate credits to match the brief. Include your name, center number, and candidate number. That's for 10 marks. And then from then we go into exporting our video. So let's continue with question 5. Okay, so for task 5, we are going to take a snapshot of the last frame of the video that we added to the timeline. So we drag our playhead to the last frame. This is the last frame. This is the last thing that appears before the video ends. Yeah, this. And then you take the camera tool once again and take a snapshot. Same procedure. This time I'm going to name it caption. Make sure it's JPEG. Choose your folder. In your case, it should be the exam folder. Click OK. Now in your effects or your project panel, make sure you're back in projects. See this little arrow here, click on it and then select project. And import your caption in here. So I'm going to do that by just picking my caption image that has been created here. Click, drag it, and then just drop it here. That will be at the end of the video. So we are selecting it and dragging it onto the timeline. But before then, we must ensure that it displays for only 7 seconds. So we have our playhead here on the 20-second mark, meaning the next 7 seconds is for our caption. So we enter 7 here, making 27. And then let's see where the playhead ended up. Number here. And this is our caption. Let me differentiate it. Purple. Then when you see the handle, just click, drag it to where the playhead ends. So we have our intro, our video, and then our caption. Now, our caption is supposed to have some text, which will include the location, the words fireworks at midnight, and the third line should be the date. Now, looking at the date in the question, we were given 31st December 2018. Now, the concept of this video is celebration of New Year. So obviously, you are not going to write December 2018. It should be the current year. So for the purpose of this tutorial, we are going to use 31st December 2019. Now, if you make a reference to the marking scheme, the correct answer should have been December 2019, which is the year in which the paper was done or the paper was written. So kindly take note of that. And so we are going to add our text by selecting the type tool, and then we start typing. Make sure the caption or the playhead is at the beginning of the caption. So we begin by adding the location. It's Elmau. And say Elmau, Austria. Then in the next line, we add our dates. Oh no, we add the text fireworks at midnight. And make sure the spelling is correct, because so this is 31st December 2022. And select your selection tool, place it appropriately so that the entire text is in contrast to the background. Now you see that it has added a clip on top of our caption, the pink clip here. And so we are going to click and drag the handle so that it ends with the caption background. It begins and ends with the caption background. Now we are being required to do a different animation of what we did the first one. The first one was movement. So this time around we are going to use blur and opacity. So still with the playhead at where it is, this time we are not going to move the text, we are just going to change the opacity and add some blur effect. So let's first deal with the opacity. With the clip of the text selected, go into your effect controls on your top left corner and let's look for opacity. There it is. The opacity at the moment is at 100. It means the text is visible for 100. So if I click and drag this 100 to my left, it totally disappears. So now let's add at the beginning of the caption, let's change it to 0. Now before you change it to 0, ensure that the stopwatch here is selected and it's blue. This means any number you place in here will create a keyframe. So if I place in 0 and I press enter, you realize that there's a keyframe created here. And it's trying to tell you that at the 20-second or 20.01 second mark, your text is not visible. So we can move this a few frames forward to say, 21. Let me use the timer so that we are accurate. So on the 21 second mark, now I want my text to appear. Still with the stopwatch selected, let's go into the percentage and change it to 100. So we have two keyframes appearing here, two keyframes here. Now we can even extend the time of the animation. You can extend it by clicking and dragging the keyframe a bit forward. It means now it will take 2 seconds, approximately 2 seconds, for your text to appear. So we have this fade in. We can add some feather effects, which is the blur effect. Just make sure the caption or the text is selected. Scroll down. You have your keyframes here. Now back in the project monitor down here, we have effects, the effects menu here, and in the search button type blur. And scroll down and look for Gaussian blur. Click and drag it on top of the text clip. And when you scroll down, you should see the blur effect, as part of what you have here. So what I'm going to do is, this playhead, I'm going to drag it to where the first keyframe of the opacity is. And I'm going to scroll up to where my Gaussian blur is and click on the stopwatch, because what I want to do is add a number and change the 0 there to 100. It creates a keyframe. Scroll down again. Now, drag my playhead to where the opacity is, where it becomes 100. Now, go up once again to where your Gaussian blur is, and now change the blurriness to 0. Now when we play this back, this is what we are going to see. From blurriness to clarity. So let's say you did a mistake in your text and you need to do some correction. All you need to do is select the text. You see this blue outline here. You can double click and it highlights red, and then change the text that you need to correct. In this case, we need to change the 2022 to 2019. Then just select your selection tool and then you're done.